Hi, this is Neil, and I'm partnering with the great HPC today to bring you the Surfactant Insights Podcast. The regulatory environment for 1,4-dioxane has shifted from investigation to some serious enforcement over the last 18 months. As of today, in January 26, global manufacturers have to deal with some fairly fragmented landscape, where the US EPA has finalized its hazard determination, New York State has transitioned to a hard enforcement of its 1 part per million ppm limit in consumer products, and the European Union has temporarily reset its dioxane agenda. So, let's look first at the EPA. They concluded their multi-year risk evaluation for dioxane under TSCA, and in November 24, they finalized their supplement to the risk evaluation and revised unreasonable risk determination. That's quite a mouthful, but this is now the legal foundation for federal risk management. It establishes that 1,4-dioxane presents an unreasonable risk to human health. The final determination includes down-the-drain disposal of consumer products as a significant pathway for groundwater contamination. So, the EPA's risk evaluation is final, and they're now in the risk management phase. So we're expecting a proposed risk management rule, which is actually overdue as of November the 14th last year. But such delays apparently are not uncommon. So let's see what the rules are. They often focus on occupational exposure and industrial discharge, but regardless, they're likely to put more pressure on the surfactant supply chain. Now, let's look at New York. It's still the only U.S. state with an enforced statutory limit for dioxane in consumer products. Under New York Environmental Conservation Law Article 35, the following limits are now legally binding. Household cleaning and personal care products, 1 ppm. Cosmetics, 10 ppm. Penalties are now at $1,000 per day per violation, increasing to $2,500 for subsequent violations. And enforcement again is based on the testing of dioxane in finished consumer products. And in the European Union, unusually, common sense may have prevailed. In August of 25, Germany officially withdrew its intention to propose a REACH restriction on dioxane in surfactants at 1 ppm, which, by the way, is a very tough limit. This is not an indefinite shelving, but a pause. German authorities have indicated they intend to reassess the regulatory approach and the scope of the restriction, and a resubmission of Annex 15 is anticipated in late 26 or 27. So again, let's see. What does this all mean for surfactants today? Well, the key issue, as you probably know, is with ether sulfates. Commercially available stripping technology from companies like Balestra can easily enable SLES, that's sodium lauryl ether sulfate, to be produced at a maximum of 5 ppm dioxane. Assuming a 15% SLES content in a typical consumer product, this represents 0.75 ppm dioxane in that dishwash or detergent or shampoo. So it's generally okay right now. However, if the EU eventually passes a 1 ppm limit on the surfactant, which I still honestly believe is unlikely, this is a much bigger deal and much more difficult to achieve. Commercial solutions are possible, but the motivation for formulators and manufacturers to look at ether sulfate alternatives will be strong. Alpha-olefin sulfonates, that's AOS, isethionates, torates, APGs, and many bio-based surfactants will get a good long look by the major companies. In the meantime, I recommend you keep a broad palette of ingredients to hand and don't be over-reliant on a single product type or feedstock. That's good advice for many reasons, including those not necessarily regulatory related. So please consider it. And thanks again, as always, for listening.